Hey, Phil, I am extremely excited about this conversation because it's all about inspiration and what led us to where we are today. And I know this is going to be less formal maybe than we've had in the past. And so I'm really excited to talk about, what does this step as a business owner look like? What are all the emotions and the things? What gets you to take the leap? And this is really timely because we are both past the year mark in our businesses, our consulting businesses. So I do sales consulting and high performance consulting, and you do brand marketing creative. And stop me if I'm missing anything, but
No, you're
all
right on. Yeah.
all for financial services. So I would love to kick off the conversation, and hopefully through this we provide some inspiration to people out there that are maybe thinking about, dreaming about their having their own business one day, and but afraid to take that leap. So I want to kick off the conversation with, tell us your story about how you started your firm.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'll give a funny analogy. When we spoke, hi Shauna, it's so nice to speak with you. And I would say congrats on a year. I'm going to start with a weird analogy, which is when we last did our talk, I had this awful lighting, right, that was sort of coming in from the side of my window. And this morning, because of this talk, I've been sitting there for like 6 months needing to change the lighting scenario. Today, it took me about 2 minutes to move the computer around and get this very nice bookshelf and much better lighting. And the reason I give that story is I think it's a little bit of an analogy for our careers, in that we often are like sort of just doing the same thing over and over and over
Yeah.
again, needing a change. And it's a lot easier to change than we think, but it takes a lot of time because old habits die hard. So I give that analogy because I think that's a little bit of my lead up to launching a business, is that I was always happy in a marketing career, and I had grown in my marketing career, and I grew to love financial services, but there was always something missing for me. And for about 5 years before I launched PHL branding, I wasn't all that happy in my career. I was doing good work, but I wasn't inspired, to use your word. And maybe we'll unpack the story a little bit more, but at a high level, I came home banging my head against the wall, scared to start a business because, frankly, money, right? Like, you're making
Yeah.
money, you've got a family, you've got a house, you got people to take care of, and you don't know what's on the other side. And for so long, I had sort of settled and just said, I'm not, I'm just gonna take the money and just not be fully happy at my job. And that was not productive and not working. And one day I had enough data points in the table where people were like, you should start your own thing. I just came home to my wife. I said, I'm going to do it. She supported me in that, which is something we should talk about because I think you need a team of supporters around you,
Yeah.
and launched my business. And when I got to the other side, the great unknown, the great sort of void that was out there, the business started to pick up and come in. But it took me literally 5 years to figure out to just turn the desk around, right? And just like
Oh my
make
God.
that very easy step, to just like switch a light, change the light switch or whatever you want to call it. And I've been well served ever since. So that's just at a high level. I'll ask you, how about your story on your end, and sort of what went into making the leap, as I'll call it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I love the story because it is so applicable. And I think we can all relate to this idea of, like, it's really about the decision. Like,
Yeah.
once you flip a switch on a decision, no matter what the decision is, it's like you can't imagine your life with having not
Yeah.
made that decision. But what is the impetus to that switch? And for me, I definitely had a similar story in that I had been, working for someone else and in corporate America for many years. I'd always had this seed of desire to do something on my own way, to really have impact and bring a new kind of different energy and approach to the work. And I was just frankly, like you, like, scared. I was having success. It's really hard to walk away when you're having success. I was having success professionally. I was, my responsibilities were growing. There was this clear path ahead of me. It's like, well, why would you leave? And it was really hard to be honest about the fact that, like, it wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough. It wasn't working. I got to the point, the way the story goes for me is it was right around Thanksgiving. I got really sick, which I rarely get sick. I got really sick, like knocked out. It stopped me in my tracks, which again, never stop. Like I'm that person that is always doing and going. And so I had a solid 2 days in bed doing really nothing. I actually randomly came across this book. I couldn't even tell you the name of the book. It was the author's name was Shauna, which was ironic.
Yeah.
And it was all about her story and this kind of similar to our story and how she moved past it. And she ended up starting her own business and really following her passion, completely different than what we're doing and what I'm doing. But I was like, you know what? My birthday is December 3rd. It was coming up in like a week. And I'm like, every time I have my birthday, I look back at the past year. And for the last few years, I've been pretty disappointed with myself, frankly. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to look back in a year and be disappointed I didn't make the progress I know I want to make personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And that next week, I talked to the person I was working for and I said, you know what? I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't have a plan, but I'm making steps towards this business.
Yeah.
And it was really scary because I'm a planner. So I kind of forced myself to put things into motion. I said it out loud. I said, this is happening. I need your guidance on like how this can work so that we're all, it's not disruptive to everyone, but it's happening. And I was frankly scared out of my mind and was like, I think I just shot myself in the foot. Like, what was I thinking? In a fit of sickness? But, it's the best decision I ever made. And it really and truly was like it was a decision point and it needed to happen. And it was very long overdue. Very long overdue.
I like to say when you're swimming against the current, the easiest thing to do is just turn around, but we just don't do it,
I know. I remember there was a woman I worked with a long time ago and she was kind of in a similar point. And again, not being in the middle of it's easier, but I remember saying to her, like, you're knocking your head against the door, go open the window. Like there's another way out. And she was like, oh, and I'm like, why don't I listen to my own advice? It's just hard when you're in it.
It's funny. You tell the story about like, we all have a moment. For me, it was like July 3rd, the night before July 4th, which is a holiday. And my friend had asked me to do some brand consulting for her. And at like July 3rd at 5:30 or 6:30, I was still working on her project and my wife for free as a favor. And my wife came in, she's like, why are you still working on July 3rd, 5:30 or 6:30? I was like, because this is what I like to do.
Yeah.
And that was when a little bit of a light bulb went off because I was like, oh, there's something I really like to do. I should do that, get back to that. But we all have those moments and you got to pay attention to them. I want to ask you, how did you handle, because my biggest issue was just on sort of like the rational side, what I mentioned, like, well, I've got income coming in and we have bills to pay and I'm going to go from whatever my salary is to basically zero, although it's not really zero. Like, how did you overcome the quantitative challenge just in your head? Like, did you have to change a mindset or anything with that? Or how did you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really hard to leave everything that I had built. Obviously the income for sure. Of course, like my background, like I do business strategy, right? So I'm like, okay, how can I get back to where I need to be? And now I realize that's not the goal necessarily, but at the moment it was like, how do I get to where I was or where I am? And so I kind of backed into and built a quick little business plan in my head about how I do that. And that certainly helped. The other thing though, I think frankly, I was getting advice from a therapist and she said, what would happen if you gave yourself permission to not have goals and expectations for some period of time, 3 months, 6 months? What would that look like? And I was like, oh my God, no, like you can't do that. That's not smart.
Right. Yes.
But as I explored it, I realized that, there's no way for me to have all the answers. And if I'm going to do this, I need to give myself permission to not have all the answers and just, I can control today. I can control the actions I take. I can control the plan I have. And that's where I chose to focus the energy. And I just had faith that the money
Yeah.
would come. And if
Yeah.
it didn't come, I'd change paths. I would figure it out. But like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, have faith, like just go.
Yeah.
What about you? 'Cause-
It's so smart because I'll tell you, the CEO of Panera, in some quote long ago, he used to say, like, when he first became CEO, he was focused on profit, profit, profit. And that was like his only focus. And he learned quickly as a CEO that profits are just a byproduct of culture, ultimately.
100%. Yeah.
And we apply that statement to businesses. And he said, when I start to focus on like the who and the why and the how and not the what, the quantitative, like more money came in. And I think we all could serve ourselves a little better to focus on like, what are the ingredients versus the number? Because I think if you focus on those ingredients, you get a better number at the end of the day. And for me, it's a little bit of what you said. Funny enough, so I was also working with a therapist because, we're like not all that happy, right? So we got to figure that
Yeah.
out and trying to piece together and get an outside perspective on what do I need to do. But what I learned is that like, if you try to rationalize a leap of faith, they're inherently like, you cannot rationalize it. So every time I try to rationalize a decision like this, you get stopped in your tracks, right? Because it's inherently not a rational thing. Like if you just did it by dollars and cents to go from whatever your income is to zero with hope, like leap of faith is not a rational thing. So I think I just basically said, stop over rationalizing this, like stop over analyzing this. And it's so cliche, but like do a little bit of what your heart is telling you to do.
Yeah.
And and I want to say, like, I don't, we're talking about starting a business and it's inspiring for people, but it's really about finding purpose and getting to what makes you happy. And I think whether it's, in your career, whether you want to stay within your company, whether you want to stay within your job, whether you want to start your own business, like, I think that's really what we're talking about is how do you get back to what fills you up and doesn't tear you down, and I think that's the trick of this conversation, in my opinion. So
Yeah. Well, and so I know we both have kids too, and our kids do that naturally, right? They
right.
like follow pleasure. As
Yeah.
adults, we
Yeah.
follow rationale, just like you
Right.
said. So you
Right.
mentioned something earlier. I want to dig into that more around support group, and
Yeah.
again, to take this irrational in
Yeah.
our society
Yeah.
leap of faith. Like
Yeah.
what kind of inspiration or support, like what was
Yeah.
it that again allowed you to actually make the jump?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the number one most important and odd piece of advice I got from a long-standing mentor of mine in our first conversation ever. He's a business mentor, and he asked me in our first conversation. He said, "What's your personal life like? Like, do you have a spouse?" At the time, I didn't, and I said to him, "That's an odd question for a business mentor." I was like, "I thought we'd only be talking about business." And this is a guy who's a CEO, who's run global companies, who's sold an endless. He's the most impressive CEO I know. And he said, "Phil, I've seen so many people get stopped in their tracks because they don't, professionally, because they don't make the right decisions in their personal life." He's like, "You need a partner in, personally, who's my wife, and, who will help you and support you professionally." And I always say that because like my wife was my support structure. Like she was the
Hmm.
one who said, "Go and do that. I want you to be happy. I know that's a risk for our family, but without that fundamental support of someone who had faith in me, and it doesn't have to be a spouse, it can be a friend, it can be a partner, it can be whoever. Without that, I would never have made the leap because it's so scary to do on your own. You need someone to like shove you off a little bit. And she
Yeah.
she shoved me off a little bit. And then, I did have, I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of mentors, as I mentioned, and a lot of people who had faith in me. But it was really my wife, like that one person who just like shoved me off the cliff a little bit, which is what we all need, that extra little push. And so for me, that was like a critical support structure. We could talk about as business grew up, you need more of that, but at least for
Yeah.
taking, that's how I think about it. How about for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my husband, same, super supportive, has been trying to push me off the cliff for a while now, and I was like very resistant. And yeah, it is funny how like you can hear a lot of supportive things from people, but it's like the right thing at the right time can make
Right.
all the difference. I know for me, what really kind of inspired it from a like support network is this question someone asked me was, you know, you talk, one of the things that I value, I really want to be a role model for my daughters. I have two daughters, they're 6 and 9. I really want to be a role model when it comes to, you know, all aspects of life. And I love that you talked on, it's not just business. Like there is in coaching, which I have coaching training, there is this idea of the wheel of life, and that, you know, you can't be really uber successful in one area and be lacking in others. It just doesn't, it's not sustainable. It doesn't work. And so it is good to have a holistic picture. Anyway, so someone asked me, you know, what do you think that by staying in a place where you're not happy, that you're kind of living out this role of role model for your daughters? And I'm like, oh my God, no, I'm not. And she said, well, you know, if you were to start a business, would that be aligned? I'm like, yes. Oh my God. Like, so for me, a lot of it came from, you know, definitely support from my husband and my family and friends, but more than anything, the drive of like wanting to show my daughters, like, just like you should follow your passion and your dreams, and like you can be happy, and you can, you know, whatever do it all means to you. Like it may not be a quantity, maybe it's a quality thing, but it was really like this desire to be a great role model for my two young girls.
Yeah, it's funny for me. I mean, you say that like just on the other side of it, because I'll just validate what you just said. My father left a business where he wasn't that happy in a very scary leap, and started a business that, you know, grew to be very successful, that made him happy, and was one of my validating inspiration points for me to start my own business.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yes, your daughter will one day look at that and say, like, I want to do something like that too, and hopefully find some fulfillment along the way. She will.
Yeah.
You know,
well, just to even, I think just to have, I did not grow up having really any kind of successful, like corporate successful role model. I grew up in Vermont, and not that there's not successful corporate people there, but it's just not I mean, it was more like, like professionals, and I just never had that. So that was really scary. So I think that idea of having a mentor and having guides, like they have been invaluable. In addition to the support, having those sort of business mentors, which frankly, you've been amazing business mentor to me.
Same. I mean, right back at you. So,
but I think to your another point you made earlier was like, you know, once you're in the business, once you've made the leap, then what? Because then it gets real, right?
Right. I know, and I wanted to ask you. So you take the leap. What's if you could sum up the experience in a year? What's it been like for you? How would you talk about it?
I feel it's been unbelievably amazing and such an education. I've grown more than I've grown in years, and you know what I realize is like what I know now a year later, I could not have known a year before. What I'll know in a year, I will not know now. Like it is just a journey, and you know, I think again, like you talked about this idea of purpose, like that's super important, that the alignment behind your values and your purpose, and being honest with yourself about like, why am I doing this? Am I living that out? And if I'm not, that's okay. But like, let's adjust, let's readjust and be honest about what the next steps are or aren't. You know, that's important too. So constantly calibrating. But I think so it's funny, you mentioned this early in the conversation. You mentioned how quick, just, you know, 2 minutes to switch your perspective or in your office. I was shocked at how quick it was to register a business. It took like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's not hard.
I thought that was like, I don't know, in my head, I thought that was a big deal. And I was like, oh my God, it's done. It's happening. And it's like those little things. So I've learned along the way that in the first year, like so many of the things that seem like big challenges are really not. It's just a matter of taking an action toward them. And that's been a really big lesson in the last year. And again, just as long as you look back and celebrate. So I have a ritual of every month I write down everything I received, not just financially received, but like all of the goodness I received. And it's been, that exercise was really helpful in the early months when things were not, you know, not like out of the gates killing it. Let's be honest. And it didn't feel necessarily, it felt scary. It still feels scary, but to say, listen, these are the small things that I have received in the progress I've made, that has made such a huge difference in my ability to maintain the energy and the drive and the desire and the passion to just keep doing the right things over and over again.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And listen, I mean, it's easy for us to say it's all positive. It's hard. Like, no one should get us wrong that it's not, I mean, it's not easy when you do take the leap, right? Because you start off not in free fall, but like where am I, and you start just following your gut, and there's new pressures that come along with running a business and owning a business. And there's not much structure or stability around you. It all falls on you, but there's so much, to your point, like gratification in that process and that experience of building something from the ground up and having that control over your future and your business's future, and sort of where to take it. And I love what you said about how much you've grown. And it's funny, or my mother's a psychologist, and she always says that, like, when you become a parent, we grow so much as adults.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And it's like we're both business parents, right? So we both became parents of our little business, and you grow so much as a professional, even after, decade plus of experience. And it's not just like your skill set expands, but I just think your emotional resilience, your ability to navigate ups and downs, your ability to take things in strides, your ability to handle pressure, like those are the biggest areas and ways I've grown in the past year and a half, because you can't point the finger anywhere else, right? You got to have thick skin. It's all on you. You got to take matters into your own hands and just keep going. And you feel like an athlete sometimes and not a professional in many ways.
It's like you're in a marathon, but you keep having to do these sprints within the marathon. You're like, wait a minute, I'm in a marathon. I'm sprinting. What's happening? I'm interested, again, in your like first year, what were some of the were there any big surprises, either positive or negative, that you went through?
Yeah. The one surprise, which I've mentioned to you before, is when I made the decision, how many people who I've known for a long time, and even to this day, who I get on the phone with and say, how did you do it? I want to do that for myself. And what's been so surprising to me is how many of us, that's revealed to me is how many of us sort of don't necessarily feel fully fulfilled in our jobs or in our careers, and how many of us are searching for a solution, find it hard to find that solution. So I've just been surprised at how many people have like reached out to try to piece that together for themselves from the journey that you and I have taken. So that's been nice and validating. I've loved helping people in that regard. So that's been a major surprise that I just didn't expect. And it's been good to have conversations with those people, to whether it's within their own jobs, like with each of those people, I've picked up how they're piecing it together. Like not everyone leaves their jobs, but some just find something fulfilling like outside of work that feeds their soul, or they do find a way to sort of massage their job into something that they love. But that's been just a really surprising, like almost it's not connected to the business, but just thing that I've seen with people I've spoken to that I never knew. I never knew how much of us sort of live that way, even though we've all experienced it for ourselves. How about for yourself from a surprise perspective? Has there been anything that's jumped out at you?
Well, first of all, I would say surprised with how terrible I did networking in when I was working. Like, I was one of those people who just put my head down and worked really hard. And like, if I do that, that's enough. And I likely was enough for the company, but not enough for myself. And, I really misses in retrospect, I didn't understand the value of continuing to connect with people outside of the work and outside of the job and the company. And what this big surprise that I've had is just, it's such a big world. Like, I have made the most amazing connections within, all different parts of the industry, just different people outside of the industry. I've been really in awe of how open people are and how much they want to help and how much you can also help them. It's like, it's truly, truly like unlimited. And this idea of networking, I know we always talk about, we have to network more, but there's like a lot I've gotten out of it just personally, like to your point around having these sort of conversations, just making a connection with someone. People want to help.
Yeah.
And I've been really surprised at how powerful even just building new network has been in my ability to grow in ways
Yeah.
I couldn't predict, right? Like it's not like I had the plan and I was like connecting dots. It's like I look back and I'm like, oh, there the dots are connected, but I couldn't
Yeah.
have planned it that way. It's just what happened by just showing up as a human and being
It's a
genuinely interested.
great point. Like that's been another surprise for me. Like at the end of the day, will the business ever be like fully successful? Quote, no, because I'm always going to keep wanting to grow it and make it better. But like the success we've had thus far has really, Shauna, been driven by like 3 or 4 of my deepest, like most loving professional relationships. You probably know who you are if you're listening to this, but like the relationships are what, will define the success. And one thing I'm happy about is that I've maintained a lot of those connections that I've had over the years. Early on in my career, I didn't do that. Like the first couple of years, I just sort of moved on
Yeah.
to a new job and left people behind. But I started to maintain those relationships. I cannot tell you, it's relationships that define whether we'll be successful or not in our new business from a support structure, but also like straight up from a new business perspective. I mean, people have wanted to help. It's funny. I was selling for another company before I made this leap, and people didn't want to help the same way. When they want it, when they know you, they want to help you. And I've been surprised that and thankful that I have those relationships where people have stepped forward and said, I want to help you. And it's meant all the world to me. And you know what? I will pay it forward in any way I can, always.
I'm with
So
you. Yeah,
yeah.
100%. Yeah, the people always, again, like I'm focused in sales and people will be like, oh, is it B2B or B2C? And I'm like, it's human to human. Like it doesn't matter if it's the brand, if it's a person, if it's a team, a product, like you are making a connection with another human being.
Yeah.
And I think that has definitely served me very well in
Yeah.
the last year. Is just making connections. And yeah, of course I go in and have like, ideal objectives,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, if I just make a great new connection, that's enough too. Like that's okay.
How
That
much one relationship can lead to, right? So
yeah.
no matter. So
What
what's
about
challenging for you? What's been challenging for you? I mean, what's been the biggest challenge since you launched the
yeah,
business?
I mean, honestly, it's like the stuff that it's like pricing, like what do I price at? Um, what is everyone else doing? Like it's the stuff that I think we don't, at least I hadn't really talked to people about before. And again, now I do because now I'm like, listen, I'm interested. You're doing awesome. Like, tell me your story. I want to hear it. I want to learn from you. I'm just
Yeah.
asking the questions that I genuinely need guidance on. But I would say definitely like some of the tactical stuff, like how do I put together a proposal that's compelling and pricing that makes sense. But then early on it was just confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
can I do
Both are.
this?
Yeah.
Getting you got to get some wins under your belt and you gain confidence, but just having kind of just keep doing the right things. That was the biggest challenge. I mean, from a business perspective looking forward, the challenge is how do I scale in a way where I'm, again, if I'm just me right now and I'm essentially renting my time out, right? If it's one-to-one, like how do I scale in a way so that I can, if my quality of thought matters, I need to maintain my quality of thought and
Yeah.
how I'm showing up for my clients and do it at a high level, because that's important to me. So how do I leverage that and have greater impact without burning out, without sacrificing other aspects of the things that matter in my life, like
Yeah.
family and relationships. What about you? What were some of
Yeah,
the
to
challenges?
your point about all those sort of tactical elements, I think the biggest challenge for me, you and I are perhaps odd birds, although I think many do it, of launching a business by yourself. Um, you have a lot of questions and you don't have many people to talk to about it. So I'm
Yeah.
going to my wife, who's a kindergarten teacher. I'm like, what do you think about this creative idea early on? And she was like, I don't know. So I really had to build, I'll call it a board of directors, of which Shauna, you're really one of those people who like I speak with, right? And I get perspective from and I talk to on a regular basis just to share what we're doing, where we're going. Like it's very hard to do that on your own. And thankfully, like I've now built a team and a structure around myself within the business. So that's acted as like, we can talk about things, we can toss ideas around, but it's really hard to do that in a vacuum by yourself. Like, is this good or not? You know, and early on,
Yeah.
that was really challenging. So now I've got structure, so that sort of gets solved. Going forward, yeah, it's a scale game, and I really believe it's just maintaining energy, maintaining hunger, maintaining resilience, keeping on going, right? Like you
Yeah.
just know. I've seen people professionally who get satisfied and like it's evolve or die, you know, and I just have to like keep going. And then the only other thing I'll mention is just patience. Like, I don't think I love our business. I think it does amazing things. I don't think it will ever be, even in 50 years, it will never be where I want it to be. Right. So
Right.
like, and there's some patience in that because like it's been a year and a half. The business has done great in a year and a half, but I see things. I know where I want to be in 2.5 years. I know where I want to be in 3.5 years. It just takes time, right? And like you know, growth does happen, but it happens over time, and you have to just keep your eye on the ball and stay focused. And I'm an impatient person. Like, I want to keep going, but
I'm
you
with
got to
you.
have patience along the way, you know? So,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
with you. Your comment around the energy and persistence and all of that, like, so I just completed a high performance certification, which is incredibly helpful, even just personally, because I think you're so, if that is that mindset of, and really it's a process around continuing, like, not everything's going to be perfect all the time. You're like, you might be like, you're focused in one area. Maybe it's energy. Maybe it is really around like, how do I recover, or how do I kind of maintain the ability to show up in the way I'm showing up, but then something else slips, and so you have to go there. And so there it is certainly, I think, a ongoing process and journey of
yeah,
continuing to refine and learn, like an athlete, just like an athlete. You mentioned that earlier. um, how do
yeah,
you peak at the right times? How do you show up in the right ways? And when
yeah,
do you make sure you recover? It's this ongoing journey and juggling, both
right.
professional and personal, right? It's not just professional, and maintaining the ability to show up, but also show up authentically and purpose aligned and true to your value, like true to who you want to be.
Yeah, and to that point, like I've talked about athletes a lot because I look at like, you know, quarterbacks, right? And it's not just how they come in so focused on every game and have to perform with like the highest stakes possible, but how do you handle losses, right? Like, you have tough moments along the way, and I think especially when you start your own business, but for all of us in our career who are sort of professionally responsible and growth oriented, like, if we have a loss, which is a hard moment or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, we make a mistake, we tend to put that all on ourselves. And how do you be resilient enough to sort of take a loss, learn from it, optimize your game, and keep going? You know, it's just like such a critical component of everything, but it's hard. And I always wonder how these professional athletes do it. Like, come in, day out. They might have a terrible game and get murdered by the press, but like they show up the next day of practice and just keep going. And so there's a lot to learn from that, you know, which is
uh,
just so. So
we're all works in process.
I know we
Yeah.
truly are. So what's, you know, if you have to sum this conversation up, what's one piece of advice you'd have for people? Like, if you look back, if you look forward, is there one sort of thing you'd point to people, whether it's, you know, looking to start a business or looking to find more purpose or more fulfillment? Like, what would you tell people, Shauna?
I mean, 1000%, like, listen to that inner voice. Like,
Yeah,
make sure you're paying attention to it.
yeah,
Don't just think with your brain. You got to think with your heart and your gut. And, that information is incredibly valuable. And yeah, does it mean you need to take a leap and start a business? No. But you do need to honor it, or hopefully you honor it, and be open to what it can lead you toward or to.
yeah,
But yeah, make sure you like listen to your gut, listen to your heart,
yeah,
and don't discount those things, because that is probably the wisest information mentor that you are going to find. So just make sure you're listening. What
yeah.
about you?
Yeah, no, I unfortunately have sort of the same exact advice, and it's more just like a twist on looking at it, which is, again, it's that culture or that humanity or that purpose. There is a byproduct, which is profit. Like, I truly believe, and you and I have talked about this, like, growth comes through inspiration. It's the name of your business, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that if we tap into like that inner sense of purpose, that inner sense of fulfillment, there is so much performance and positive benefit that comes from that, because people feed off of our energy. We feed off of our energy and passion. People want to align themselves with others who are passionate and inspired. We will want to learn more if we're aligning around that purpose. We want to grow more. Like if you can tap into that pot of gold and like sort of for a moment set everything aside, I truly believe like we will be better performers. Like you will be better in your career if you found that inner why. And it's not just an ambiguous why. Like I really think people need to take the time to define what that is, because the reason why I flailed around for 5 years is because I never defined it. Like I never took the time to understand what is that purpose that I want to get back to. And I think if you can define what fulfills you most and start to use that as a filter for everything you do, every choice you
Yeah.
make, you'll tap into that. But you got to take a moment to really step back and think about, how would I write down like what really gives me fulfillment? And then once you've defined it and you know it, you can start to activate around it. So I just think there's so much benefit stocked up in exactly what your company is all about. So it's
Yeah.
great value.
Yeah, inspiration, but yeah, I actually have a purpose statement. I'm looking at it right now. Do you have like a purpose statement or values?
Honestly, my inner purpose, Shauna, is I love to help. And I know that's the
Yeah.
oddest thing in the world, but like what for me, and like I always loved helping businesses be the best they can be, helping brands be the best they can be, helping companies get focused and inspired around a singular message. I love to do that for individual people. Like
Yeah.
people who have worked with me will hear, like, whether I manage them or whether it's, the odd person I'm connected with, like, I just love to help and I love to find ways to help. And there's been tons of positive that's come back to that. But on the business side, that's what I built the business, was to help financial services companies be the best they can be. And so that's the purpose, but it's both a professional and a personal purpose, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's
Same.
for you, right? So.
Very same. Yeah. Mine's very similar. Mine's really about helping people, businesses, whatever, like recognize and unlock the potential by taking inspired action. Like it really is about inspiration and helping them get to where they want to go, even if you don't even see necessarily the path there in the first place.
Right. I love that. So,
that's awesome.
Great, Sean. It's a great conversation. And, for me, it's anyone who might be listening at this point, I would love to help and have a conversation around this. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Same. So. Yes, please. Hopefully this was inspiring to anyone who listens. And I'm happy to help too. Make sure you follow your gut and take the leap. That's whatever the leap is. It can be in any direction. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure, Phil. I love hearing your story. It's a great way to end the week. A little inspiration from you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
All right.